Hello and welcome back to another RouterGods video. My name's Humphrey. We're going to do a video that I've been waiting to do for a long time, and that is it worth it, or was it worth it for me to go from operations, that is a network engineer, working at a very large restaurant company and doing network engineering for many other companies? Was it worth it moving from network engineer to sales and pre-sales engineer? We're going to cover everything from the decision-making process, the pay, the travel, all the way up to what are the hours like, can I stay technical, will I still get to configure routers and switches, and then we will end up with the typical day. And then to sum it up, was it worth it? Would I do it over again? Are there things that I would change? So just to give you a little background, actually I should start with the disclaimer. Everything I say is not necessarily that of my employer. There are my personal thoughts, and take it as that. All right, so just to give you a little bit of background, as most of you know, I've been running the RouterGods meetup group since 2009, so that would put it at approximately 12 years and some change now. Also, the RouterGods YouTube channel started shortly after. We'll just call it 12 years. Now, in the meantime, approximately 5.5 years ago, I got hired by Cisco. And Cisco I affectionately call Mega Corp, or Mega Corporation. So I started in Southern California for 1 year in what's called Southern California Select, which is pretty decent sized companies. So you cover what is called, as a pre-sales engineer, you cover what is called a patch. A patch is the area that you cover, the types of customers that you cover. Some patches are public sector, so you handle universities, colleges, utilities, that type of stuff. Other ones are smaller companies, and you have everything in between, all the way up to some patches are just one customer, so it's just like a really humongous customer. Something like, I guess the United Nations might be a patch. I don't know for sure, but that would certainly warrant, maybe just one account, one person handling that one account. So I started in Select, lasted for 1 year, kicked butt at that position. And then I went for a role with Cisco Meraki, where I have been for the remainder of the time. And I covered really large accounts, kind of on the West Coast area. And then about 1.5 years ago, I was given the opportunity to move to Singapore, covering Cisco Meraki customers, and that has been really awesome. Definitely talk more about the whole expat thing and how the process is to move over. So that's to give you the little bit of background. Okay, let's start off with the pay. How is the pay like versus a normal network engineer? So before I was working at Cisco, immediately before working for Cisco, I was a network engineer for Panda Express, so Panda Restaurant Group, which is the parent of Panda Express. So I was a contractor, and they were really, really good to me in terms of letting me take kind of the first half of the year as a vacation. Basically, I would spend it traveling around the world, in Thailand and Asia, and then the projects would usually hit in the second half of the year. So then I'd take kind of the first chunk of the year off, and then I kind of had a guaranteed position back at Panda. So just kind of rotate, flip-flop, Asia, Panda, Asia, Panda. And it worked out really well. How much was I paid there? I was paid around $60K a year. Now, as a contractor, I'm still responsible for my taxes and my own medical and stuff like that, but $60K. Now, in Southern California, $60,000 US as a single person with no kids is actually pretty decent. I think it's it's a nice sweet spot to be in. I always tell people, if you're single with no kids, 60 to 80K a year is actually doing okay, as long as you're not in a really expensive place like Santa Monica, San Francisco, or Seattle, or New York City. Then 60 to 80K is probably not going to work out too well for you. But if you're not in those major metropolitan areas, that is a nice place to be. You can pretty much eat wherever you want to go. I mean, you can't eat at Morton's every night, but once in a while you could splurge. And you don't generally have to worry about things like bills, and you can fill up your gas tank without worrying, that type of stuff. You're in a pretty comfortable place to be. So it wasn't too bad. Life was good for those years at Panda. Now, pay as a pre-sales engineer, it comes in two pieces. You have your base salary, and your base salary, depending on the company that you work for, some pay more than others, but let's just call your base salary somewhere between 100 to 150K. Let's just call it that range. You can easily find the salaries for companies that you want to work for on Glassdoor. So your base salary, you get paid no matter what. If you sell zero, you still get your base salary. Now, I will say that if you sell zero for a decently long enough time, you're probably not going to be working too much longer at that company. But you have to really try to sell zero. I mean, it's you have to be basically flipping your customers off and telling them to pound sand to sell zero for too long. Okay, so your base salary, 100 to 150, depending on what job and vertical and company. And then you have a variable or commission portion of your salary. And so there's different splits. There's 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. There's many different splits. But when you combine your variable portion with your base portion, you get what's called the OTE. So if you hit your target at 100%, that's your pay for the year. And generally for pre-sales and sales engineers, OTE is somewhere in the neighborhood between 175,000 to 225, 250,000 for 100%. So right off the bat, you can tell that this is 3 to 4x of your salary as a network engineer. And in some cases, it could be 5x or hopefully it's not 6x, but it's a really, really nice multiplier over your salary as an ops person. So, and you maybe think, okay, triple the salary, 4 times the salary, what's the big deal? It is a big deal because when you think about it, your expenses do not ramp up as quickly as your salary. So I'll give you an example. At $60,000 a year, I was still saving a decent amount of money because my expenses were somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's just call it $15,000 to $20,000 a year. When you're making $200,000 a year, your expenses do go up. I mean, you're making more money. You want to splurge a little bit, buy a better car, that type of stuff. But it really only went up from maybe $15,000, $20,000 to maybe $25,000, $30,000. I mean, it wasn't a 4x multiplier. It maybe increased by 30 to 50%. So you're just banking a lot more of your money. Now, along with the pay, along with your commission, the commission part of your pay, let's call it 30%, let's call it like $45,000 to $50,000 worth, right? If you hit 100%, that is subject to accelerators. So if you have a really good year and you sell a lot, then that goes a little crazy, right? You can get multipliers, 2x, 1.5x, 2.5x, 3x for some companies. So it can get pretty crazy really fast if you hit big deals, if you just totally what we call blow it out of the park. So you can go from 200K to 300K, 350K, 400K. I do know engineers personally, pre-sales engineers personally, that have made more than 500, 600, 700, 800K in a year, multiple years running. So it can get pretty crazy. The pay can be very, very good. And even if you don't sell that much, I mean, even if you just hit your base salary, 120, 130, 140 is not too shabby at all. So pay is definitely there. Also, when you work with the big companies, you get all the benefits like the 401k match, the stock, employee stock purchase plan, which basically is free money. It's stock at a discount, the really good medical. So there's all these other programs to help with your pay. Also, in these types of pre-sales positions, there are things called bonuses or spiffs or that type of stuff where if you do certain actions or if you hit certain targets or pass this exam, you get more money. For example, at Megacorp, if you pass your CCIE or if you get recerted, that's a really nice chunk of money that you can get. Right? So pay is great. In fact, looking back at it, I probably should have gone to pre-sales a lot sooner because the pay is great. Okay, the travel. How's the travel like? Depends on your patch, but if you have a nationwide patch or a global patch, big customers everywhere, travel can be quite extensive. Now for me, as my former manager likes to put it, Humphrey is built differently. What he means is, I love to travel. Any chance I get to be on a plane and to live the night in a hotel, I will take it. In fact, I do not want to go back to the apartment. The apartment's great, right? When I was living in Burbank was great. When I was living in Arizona, Arizona's great. But I live to travel. I want to be in a hotel. I want to be visiting different cities. So when I was in the US, I was zipping across New York and Seattle and San Francisco and Austin, Texas and Denver and Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City I've visited probably 50 plus times. In fact, there is a Marriott hotel in Sandy, Utah that I visited so many times I didn't even need to really check in anymore. I didn't need to give them my ID. They just knew me. Just, nope, here's Humphrey again. Let's get the room ready. So they're probably wondering where I've been for the last year and a half. Darn COVID. But yeah, so the travel, if you get the right patch that allows you to travel, and of course when you're interviewing, ask how much travel is involved. You can travel as much as you want, like go freaking nuts, right? So you'll hit all the platinum and elite miles, and you'll get all the Hertz and President's Club and all that stuff. So you'll hit all the hotel programs without any problems. Now, of course, COVID has affected that quite a bit, but during non-COVID times, travel, I just ate it up. I was, in fact, they will love you if you go into the interview and you tell them, "Hey, bring it on! I'd love to travel." I mean, that is great. Being in front of your customers is probably the most important thing that you can do. FaceTime is number one. So yeah, travel was great. How are the hours? Okay, this is definitely not a 9-to-5 job. You will be working sometimes longer hours. Sometimes you can do shorter hours. So longer hours, if you're doing a tender or RFP, and an RFP tender is when a customer bids out the solution to multiple vendors. So it could be Megacorp, Megacorp 2, Corporation A, Corporation B, right? And they give you 200 questions to answer, right? Does your product do this? Give us the specs of this, right? It's an Excel sheet that goes on forever. So when you get those for the really large deals, you will be working longer hours because, I mean, this deal could be $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, stuff I've been involved in. So yeah, those are going to be some long hours. But on the flip side, you'll have days where it could be just a bunch of WebExes, just a bunch. It could be like 2 WebExes or 1 WebEx. It could be a light day, and you go to a cafe and you work, right? And that's another thing about the hours. In pre-sales, you are more flexible in your hours. You have freedom. That's the biggest thing about pre-sales. Above anything else, the pay, the travel, anything else. When you're working as a network engineer, you go to the freaking office. 9 to 5, 9 to 6. You work the weekends. You have a pager, not pager anymore, but you get the point, right? You have the duty, the on-call duty for the weekend. Yeah, you can't get away too far because you have to be able to respond fast. You have to be able to go back to the office really quick. So you are chained to your work. Not a lot of flexibility. In pre-sales, you have a lot of flexibility. If you want to move meetings around, you have a lunch here, you want to work at a Starbucks. We know one person, he basically just spends most of the day working outside, right? Takes the calls on the phone, he's working from a park, riding his bike around. And as long as you get your job done, no one really cares, right? No one's looking when you're on your WebEx, you've got your background. They're like, dude, why aren't you behind your desk, right? In fact, if you're on a WebEx and you're out and about and you're at a cafe or you're at the beach and you're taking calls, people praise you for that. People are like, dude, that's awesome. Working outside, go for it. Have at it, right? So the freedom of your hours and your location is probably the best thing about going into a sales engineering role. All right, let's talk about, or actually before I get into technical, what about weekend work? Yes, there sometimes is the weekend work, but for the vast majority of the time, you're not working on the weekend. So this is unlike in operations where you have the on-call, you have the server setups in the weekends, data center work, all that good stuff. So really that doesn't come into play. Now, what I will say is ever since I've moved to Singapore about a year and a half ago, the work-life balance has changed along with COVID. In Asia, what I've noticed is, I should probably do a completely separate video about this, but it's strange in Singapore. There's this messaging app called WhatsApp. It's not that popular in the US, but in Asia, your customers and your colleagues and other people, they'll hit you up on WhatsApp at weird hours, like at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and expect an answer. So yeah, I think I'll save that for another video where we talk about cultural differences between Singapore and the US and how work life is. Okay, let's talk about how can I stay technical? So you may be asking, okay, I'm an engineer right now. I'm a network engineer. I like playing around with routers and switches, and I like setting up wireless access points. Can I stay technical, or will I be delegated to just doing PowerPoint presentations, right? So as a sales engineer, you can be as technical as you want to be. If you still want to do command line configurations and setting up virtual machines, you still can, right? I still do some API work. I still get on BGP sometimes. I do OSPF design. I do a lot of demos. I do a lot of Meraki dashboard demos, and I make training videos. So I'm still very, very technical. Now, am I configuring routers every day? No, nor do I need to or want to, right? So, but you have the option to if you want. You can stay as technical as you want. Now, what I will say is one area that you will be very, very technical is if you have many customers, you will see lots of networks. In fact, if you compare it to being a normal network engineer, like I was at Panda, I saw one network. Now I get to see that network deep, right? You're in control of that network. But when you're working in pre-sales with many customers, you're seeing all of your customers' networks, and you see what works and what doesn't work. And you see customers that just, they don't know what's going on, right? So yeah, you get multiple spectrums. I have been to customers where they have scared me with their technical ability, right? It doesn't happen often, but I've had customers where I get on and, after a couple days of meeting them and them showing me their network and what they do, I basically go, you know what? You guys are far ahead of the curve. Like, you guys can program, you guys can automate, you have your diagrams in order, you have change control. I mean, they are on the ball. It's like a military operation, right? So I've got those types of customers that are very few, but then I have the other spectrum, which they just don't know what's going on. And then I have customers where they want to do the right thing, but they just don't have enough money, or they can't hire enough people. That is a common theme that pops up here in Asia, is that the view on IT folks and network support folks is a lot different than the US. Very drastically different views. So I will make a separate video on that later, or else this video is going to go like 30 minutes long. Okay? So yes, you can stay very technical. Okay, what's a typical day like? There is no typical day. It's all different. It can be quiet. I mean, okay, it could be quiet. In fact, you'll have what we call unicorn days. A unicorn day is a day where you don't have any scheduled customer meetings, and you don't have any internal meetings. So no WebExes, no internal training, team meetings, that type of stuff. Unicorn days don't come too often, but when they do come, it's freaking sweet, right? You can block off your calendar and just kind of, hey, I'm going to catch up on some emails at Starbucks, right? as long as COVID isn't around and we're not locked down in Singapore like we are right now. But, right, unicorn days are pretty cool. But a typical day is a couple customer meetings, maybe intro meeting or two, and then I might do a demo or two, and that's kind of it, and then catch up on emails. The crazy days are things like, I'll give you a typical crazy day I had last week. 5 hours straight of WebEx, so it was like 1 hour WebEx, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 30 minutes, and it was just, there was no break. I mean, that happens actually quite a bit now because of COVID, right? So you're trying to sandwich in internal meetings with the customer meeting, and then every couple of days I'll have an on-site meeting, right? Of course, COVID messes with that, but you drive or fly or wherever and meet with the customer on site, and then you do follow-up emails, look up bombs. So if a customer says, I want this, give me a list of what to buy. That is a bill of materials. You kind of want this, you kind of want this, back and forth questions and stuff like that. So that's a typical day. I love the unpredictability of it because every day is different. So that's like awesome, right? I hate just Groundhog Day, same thing over and over and over. So I expect and I want chaos. I think that's actually why I really like this job. The chaos is where I thrive in. Because I'm kind of like the firefighter personality, right? Things have to be happening, adrenaline has to be pumping and stuff like that. Okay, so conclusion, right? Worth it, not worth it, would I do it over again? So totally worth it to go from network engineer to pre-sales. I definitely would not have gotten the travel. The pay is just amazing, right? Just when you're making when you're making sales engineer money, you really only need 1 or 2 years of just kicking butt to change your life. I mean, you're just kind of set. And what I mean by that is, if you have a really good year, 350K, 400K, right? Really, really good year, boom, 400K. 400K in a year, that's a house payment, or maybe like half of the house, right? So if you come into this job with debts, right? You owe credit cards. I had credit card bills. Credit was in the dumpster. It was like 500 something score. I mean, it was terrible. I owed the IRS. Like, I had lots of bills. I was kind of in semi trouble, right? But after a year and a half, it was done, right? Everything was cleared out. After a couple years after that, got a house. Credit is great. Car paid for. So I just zeroed everything out and just turned it completely around. So you don't need too many years of pre-sales money to get yourself set up, and then it snowballs after that. So once you have your bills paid off, once you have your taxes in order, once you have your house and your car, you're just banking it. You're just socking the money away. So that part is great. The change in lifestyle, having freedom of your own hours and where you go and how you do things, that has been great. The technology that I have seen has been great. But the main thing is meeting people. That's the best thing. Meeting customers, seeing their network, talking with folks. It's great to come from a network engineering background, because you get to say, hey, I know what it was to stack and rack 200 to 300 servers over a weekend. I've done that many times, right? And at the end of the weekend, your hands and your fingers are bloody from the cage nuts, because you have that screwdriver and trying to put it in the rack and you slip and it just bam, right? Done that many times. I've done weekends where you're given a task to reboot, upgrade a router, a chassis. You never done it before, right? So first time, right? I hope it works. Maybe it was, and then you're kind of staring at it going, it hasn't come back up, and it's 6 o'clock a.m. on Sunday, and stores need to open, right? So I've done that, And I think when you come from a network engineering background and you go into pre-sales, your customers will love that, because you're not, you didn't just pop straight out of college to go into sales engineering, right? So having a network engineering background is a perfect fit for going into pre-sales. So highly recommend it. If you have any questions, if you're a network engineer right now, you're trying to get into pre-sales, you have questions, put it in the comments, and I could turn it into a video in the future. All right, so I hope wherever you are, you're doing safe. I hope everything's going well for you, whatever country you're in. Thanks for watching RouterGods. My name's Humphrey, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.